I have always been a champion of the underdog. As a kid on Saturday mornings, I would take my head and I would plant it in my hands, and I would stare at our Zenith 12-inch black and white TV with rabbit ears covered in tinfoil, and I would root for Wile E. Coyote. I mean, just once, don't you wish that Wile E. Coyote had caught the Roadrunner? That guy spent some serious bank on Acme. And the Roadrunner is hella arrogant, right? So just once, we hoped that he had gotten the Roadrunner, but he never did. You know, when I was a kid, I drank Pepsi instead of Coke. And I didn't really like baseball, but if I had, I would have worn a Cubs cap, because they were the underdogs. How many of you eat French fries? Yeah, and I imagine that you all put ketchup on your fries, but I was a mustard gal. I grew up in Miami in the 1970s, and I went to school with kids whose families had immigrated from Cuba, and there were Jewish kids who were my friends in class, and there were people who were Catholic and Protestants and Black, and you know, even in junior high, when people were making jokes, there were still a few kids who felt confident enough they could come out and announce that they were gay. I watched Alex Haley's Roots on my little 12-inch black and white TV, and I thought to myself, man, I am lucky. I am so lucky that I live in a time in our country where everyone has equal opportunities and they're treated fairly. I was probably naive, and I had a little bubble of privilege. I grew up, but you know, as a kid, I don't really remember ever experiencing hate. I mean, real, blind, raw hate, and never directed at me. And so as I grew up, I wasn't expecting it. I started a career, I had a family, and you know, things were pretty good. And as a country, things were going really, really well. I mean, we elected a black president twice. The gay people, they were able to get married, and bin Laden was dead. And then, June 12th, 2016, things changed. My husband and I woke up because our youngest daughter, Bryn, was standing in the doorway of our bedroom, sobbing. That's how we learned about the Pulse massacre. Raw, blind hate had come to our house. I no longer had the privilege of being able to sit on the sidelines and cheer for the underdog. I had to fight. And the response to the Pulse tragedy, the response, the people that stood in lines for hours to donate blood, the vigils, the wings, those angels with those great white wings, those responses, they reminded me the best way to fight hate is with love and action. So you might also remember the summer of 2016 was the last leg leading up to the presidential election. And I had formed this kind of group with some friends, the Mom Squad. Now, we had met at Bernie rallies, and we were now attending Hillary rallies. And we were also on weekends going from door to door trying to get people to register to vote. And the months passed. We had an opportunity to meet Barack Obama, us in the entire arena of UCF. but we were doing something. We were taking action. We spent the night of the election together after we had voted, and we watched as the results came in. And by the end of the night, we were just numb. 2 days later, my daughter Bryn came home from high school, and she was visibly shaking. There were some students who had been emboldened by the election of Trump, and they had written on the bathroom walls, "Black people, sign up for your slavery numbers. The KKK is here to stay. Hashtag Trump for life. My daughter and her friends, they fought back with love and action. They got sticky notes and they wrote messages, messages of empowerment, messages that said, I believe in you. You are beautiful. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Love trumps hate. And a couple of days later, when I found out the Women's March was happening in D.C. after the inauguration, I was in. My good friend Griselle and I, we met for breakfast, and we were going to make plans to drive to D.C., but by the end of that breakfast, when the check came, we had a totally different plan. You see, we had always believed in changing gun laws. But Pulse had come to our home and made it real, and I had believed that racism existed, but I never thought that it went to school beside my daughter. And so Griselle and I, we had originally intended to go to D.C., but we were privileged. We had the money to go. Wouldn't it be better if we took our time and we launched a campaign right here in Orlando so that everybody that wanted to share their voice could? And that's what we did. I took my experience being a campaign manager for Jimmy Carter in the mock election at Pinecrest Elementary in 1976, and Griselle took her political experience of being a PTA president. We pooled our resources, and we worked 24/7 to self-teach ourselves, to give ourselves on-the-job training about how to mount the Women's Rally of Central Florida. And on January 21st, we mounted that rally. And we were surrounded by people with powerful words, and there was poetry, and there was music, and there was hope. And you know, Pulse does not define Orlando. Hate does not define Orlando. The mouse at the end of I-4 does not define Orlando. This is Orlando. We are Orlando. Stories are Orlando. It is ever changing, and it is ever alive.